All right, so I just want to make a quick video to talk a little bit about scholarly articles. So again, this is what a scholarly article is going to look like. It's going to be very dense. It's going to be in a very specific journal, like a journal that has like such a specific research focus. That's how we know that the people who are using this journal are people who are experts in this field, writing for this journal and then reading this journal. We also have things like an issue number, volume number, date, page numbers. It'll usually be found in an academic database like Science Direct. You can also find them on Google Scholar. There's going to be a lot of authors a lot of the time. Let's jump in, okay? So if we're looking at an academic article, this one is actually kind of nice. We have highlights at the top of the article, which I absolutely love to see, because what they're doing here is they're trying to make sure that people have more access to this information, that it's not super hard to read and understand. This might be a good place to find good quotes. But then the next place that we have is this abstract. And so an abstract is going to be an important part of a scholarly article. And basically, it's going to be a paragraph at the beginning of the article that tells us what the article is about. It'll include the thesis statement. It'll usually describe some of the methods and some of the conclusions about why they think this is going to be an important study, right? But usually they try to go over everything really quickly. This one's actually pretty long, but I love that they broke it up into different sections. Sorry, here's my video popping up. That's pretty unique. Again, it really feels like they're trying to help us understand this article and break down the information as much as possible, which makes sense because this is for dealing with clinicians dealing with lung cancer cases, right? And lung cancer treatment. The next section that we'll have is an introduction, and the introduction for an academic article is going to be the same as an introduction for your paper. It's going to be a lot longer, right? But the introduction is going to tell us why this information is important right now. Like, why does this matter? Why do I need to read this? And then also, what is the main argument here? What is the thesis statement? So you'll be able to find both of those in the introduction. When we move on to methods, methods is going to be the section that is just literally telling us how the study was conducted. How did they gather data? So for this study, they're talking about a lot of medical data. They might also be using things like software to collect patient information and things like that. So they're going to really break that down for us. This can be an incredibly dry section to read. And so unless you're going to be doing some similar research yourself or trying to replicate the study, I would go ahead and say skip it or skim it if you want. Results. This is going to be a section where they're literally just going to report what the data is. They're not going to tell us any kind of interpretation or what the significance of the data is yet. They're really just going to give us the data. And so a lot of times what this will look like is a lot of charts, graphs, tables, any kind of way of sharing numbers and other, kind of like giving that to us in a visual way to help our minds make sense of it, like what the data is. But right, again, they're not going to be telling us why it matters. That is going to be in the next section, which is called the discussion section, okay? So this is where they're going to say, okay, so we found out that 85% of people, blah, blah, blah. Here's what that means. Here's why that matters. Here's what we need to do with that information. Here's why we need to change our practices, or here's why we need to do more research. So basically in this discussion section, they're going to be breaking down the numbers and explaining to us what it means and why it's important. And so another way of describing this is the interpretation of the data section, okay? Finally, and you can see it's very long, and that's because it's probably the most important part of the whole article. Finally, we have an incredibly short conclusion. And really what we're doing with a conclusion in an academic article is usually just saying, what do we want people to do with this now that they've read it? Okay, and it's the same again with our papers. So a lot of times with academic articles, they're saying either we need to change our practices in our clinics or we need to do more research into this. And so basically we'll see this again. Here's what we need to change. Here's what we need to do. It's really just like looking to the future. What do you do with this information now that you know it, basically? Okay. All right. So that's basically our overview of the academic article. For you, what's important to keep in mind here is that you want to get quotes from these. And so if you are getting a quote from an academic article, I would recommend looking for, most of them are not going to have highlights. I think the abstract can be a little bit sounding too much like it's summarizing, almost like the back of a book. Like when you're trying to decide if you want to read a book, you're reading that. And it's really trying to sell the book to you more than it's trying to like actually communicate clearly. I think the best quotes are going to come from the introduction and the discussion sections. Okay. The introduction is going to have good general information about the topic. The discussion section is going to have specific information about what the study found or what the article found. Okay. This will be the same. The reason that I wanted to break down these sections for you is because most academic articles are going to be formatted this way unless they are deep in the humanities, in which case they may not have these specific sections. Okay. All right. I want to keep this short, so I'm going to move on. I hope you have a good day. I hope this was helpful.